We have with us Dr. Musharraf Hussain, who is Chief Executive of the Academy Institute here in Nottingham. Musharraf, help us understand how the Qur'an is important for Muslims in daily life.
Well, the Qur'an plays a central role in the life of a believing and practicing Muslim, from their devotions to their social and cultural customs and way of living, to actually legal and political life as well. And when I say political life, I do mean that in most Muslim countries, the parliament's opening is done with the recitation of the Qur'an. And so are in every meeting or assembly begins with the recitation of the Qur'an. I think that was also the practice amongst the Christians at one time, when their assemblies and their meetings would all open with the recitations or readings from the Bible, whether they were political or legal or whatever. So that was quite in many ways a normal practice. So the Qur'an still plays that very important role in their lives, and what that shows is the life revolves around the Qur'an. Let's take, for example, the devotion and worship. When Muslims pray, they have to read the Qur'an in their prayers. The most famous chapter is the short opening chapter known as Al-Fatiha, which begins with, I begin with the name of God, the kind, the caring. All praises are for God, the Lord of the worlds, the King, the kind, the caring, the owner of the day of judgment. We worship you alone, and from you alone we seek help. Keep us on the straight path, the path of those you favored, and not those who incurred your anger, nor those who were misguided. So that's the opening chapter of the Qur'an, and the Muslims have to read that. So they memorize this. In fact, Muslims use this chapter very regularly. Those who are practicing Muslims, almost in every encounter they have, they would read this chapter for blessings.
Okay. That's in the 5 daily prayers, especially at the beginning of each prayer cycle.
Yes.
It needs to be read. What are some other ways, like in the month of Ramadan, that's really important, the Qur'an,
Yes.
is it not?
Well, the month of Ramadan is when Muslims fast from dawn till dusk for nearly 30 days, the whole month. That month is actually called the month of Qur'an, because the Qur'an was the first revelation came in the month of Ramadan, and therefore it has that very important relationship with it. So what happens during this month is that in the evenings, the Muslims would stand up for hour to hour and a half and listen to one part every evening. So there's 30 parts it's divided into. So they would spend that time listening to a reciter, the Imam, reading it. So that is the relationship. And not only that, but they would then go away and read it themselves as well. There's a lot of Quran reading and listening during the month of Ramadan.
So you mentioned the Qur'an is divided into 30 parts. The chapters or surahs of the Qur'an vary widely in length. So it's divided into 30 parts for the month of Ramadan. And is it divided in other ways for other devotional purposes?
Yeah, John, this is a very simple reading scheme. So there are 2 well-known reading schemes. One is the whole Quran is actually divided into 7 equal parts. So the idea was the devout Muslim would read one manzil, one part a day, and complete the whole in a week. So you would read the whole Quran in a week. And the other is divided, is the division, which is the most popular one, is the whole Quran is divided into 30 equal parts. So you can finish it in a month. And it takes roughly about, in English, my translation, you can read it in about 25 minutes each juz. So that's how long it takes. But nowadays, we are very, very busy with the world. And so I have now divided it into 365 sections. So there is a page for each day. So making it even easier.
Okay, good. So I lived in Cairo at one time, and the Qur'an was very prominent in public space and especially when there was a shop opening or a funeral, or can you tell us a little bit about the Qur'an in these kinds of situations?
Yes, particularly at the time of death and even when somebody's dying, our practice is to recite a particular chapter of the Qur'an. When somebody's on their deathbed, the family gathers and reads that. Then through the next 3 days of mourning, there is a lot of Qur'an recitation, and some of the best reciters read it melodiously and beautifully, as a time of reflection, really. And same with other festive occasions. People would start those wedding, for example, would start with the recitation of the Qur'an.
So I've heard the Qur'an is sometimes used as a matter of healing, and how's that work?
Yeah. Well, that's the Qur'an itself claims. That there's a verse which is repeated a few times where God says that فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ. It has healing for people. Of course, that healing, it could be metaphorical here, meaning that it gives you moral, social, and spiritual medicine that will keep you sane and virtuous and good and kind and generous and really develop a strong character, and through that you would get healing. But others would take it more literally and say, well, we can read certain parts of the Qur'an, certain selected verses, and help the sick person to heal. And so that is practiced as well as ruqya as well. Yes, so that's a common practice as well.
So here we have the Qur'an on a stand. Is this normally what you find in a Muslim home?
That's right. This is the rehal, which carries the Qur'an, and so we sit on the floor and read it like this. It's to obviously, because you're going to be reading it, let's say, for half an hour or so, you don't want to be holding it in your hands. And of course, Qur'ans used to be massive in those days. But you had to write it really big. Of course, it's still, it's encouraging people to spend more time reading. Yes.